The now is I am. Ask yourself the question, when does my experience take place? The answer is always now. How many nows have you experienced today? Have there been many nows? And if so, how long exactly does each now last? Your experience is taking place now. So now is available for direct investigation. How long does now last? Is the now that was present while we were having dinner last night a different now from the now that is currently present? And if so, what is the difference between them? When did the now in which dinner last night took place end? And when did this present now begin? And if there is no difference between them, then it means that the now that was present at dinner last night and the now that is currently present must be the same now. Then neither can be located in time. Therefore, the now has no limit. That is, it has no duration. It is not in time. This now is the only now there is. It has no limits. It has no borders. It doesn't start and stop. It is not a moment in time. This now is the only now there ever is or has been. This now has never been in the past. It hasn't come from somewhere. It is not going anywhere. It has never existed in a past. It is not moving along a line of time into an endless future. The now is still. This now, the only now there ever is, remains always the same. It is not coming from a past or going towards a future. Thought cannot think of the now, because thought can only know an object, and the now has no objective qualities with which it could be limited, and therefore it cannot be thought about. When thought thinks about now, it turns the now into time. In order to think about something, we must label it. And by the time we have labeled anything, the thing that we are labeling has already passed. Therefore, it is not possible to label our current direct experience now. Only an object or event in the past or future can be labeled. In fact, it is not objects in the past and future that are labeled. It is the labeling of our experience that creates the imaginary past and future in which those objects and events now seem to appear or take place. Our entire experience takes place now. Everything we have ever experienced takes place in this now, the only now there is. Nothing took place in a past, and nothing will take place in a future. The universe didn't start millions of years ago. There are no millions of years. Nor will time last forever. There is no forever. There is only eternity. I am not referring to some remote and extraordinary realm that only certain mystics have access to. I am simply referring to this now, the only now there ever is. This timeless now that each of us is intimately experiencing. Filtered through the finite mind, eternity appears as time. Thought superimposes its own limits on the eternal now, and as a result makes the eternal now appear in a way that is consistent with its own limitations. That is, it makes eternity appear as time. Thus, what is everlasting in time for thought is, in reality, the eternal now, or eternity itself.
I believe yesterday you said, I am is the portal through which eternity comes into existence.
Comes into time.
Comes into time.
Time, yes.
Could you explain that again, please?
Do you understand that in awareness's experience of itself, there is no knowledge of time prior to the arising of mind, that is, thought and perception. Prior to the arising of thought and perception, there is no experience of time. Deep sleep is one example of that. No mind, no time. Yeah? As soon as the mind arises again in the morning, time seems to exist again. So, for awareness prior to the mind, there is no time. When awareness assumes the form of the mind, or the activity of the mind, that awareness itself seems to appear as time. So what is the way? How does awareness appear in the form of mind by localizing itself. Each of us is a localization of awareness, and it is this localization of awareness, through this localization, that thinking and perceiving take place. So if we, as this localization, this separate self, we investigate our primary experience, we come to this experience, I am. So I am is the portal through which the separate self passes on its way back to its true nature. In other words, the knowledge I am is the last experience the separate self has on its way back to its true nature. But it is the first experience consciousness has, leaving its true nature, on its way to becoming a finite mind. So the knowledge I am is like a prison door that says bondage on one side and freedom on the other side. The criminal who has just been sent to prison, he enters the prison door. Through the prison door, he loses his freedom. When he passes through it this way, he passes through the same door in the other direction 6 years later, and he gains his freedom. So the door he loses his freedom as he passes through it one way, and he gains his freedom as he passes through it the other way. That's the I am. Consciousness, through this portal, limiting itself as the finite mind, consciousness loses its freedom, seems to lose its freedom, as it seems to become the separate self. When it passes through the same portal, the knowledge I am, in the other direction, it regains its freedom. This is why Krishnamurti titled one of his books, The First and Last Freedom. What is the last freedom for consciousness in one direction is the first freedom for the individual in the other direction. So I don't see that look of satisfaction on your face. So,
rightly or wrongly, I was putting that together with an imagery in my mind of existence emerging, existing and dissolving, and somehow I thought that portal through which being, or you can call it divinity, and I was trying to relate that to the time of the body and mind, and somehow I could imagine eternity.
Eternity is being.
Yes,
pure being is in eternity. Prior to the arising of existence, pure being is in eternity. There's no time there.
Right.
When being assumes the form of existence, then time and space appear.
Is that in human existence chronology, or are we talking about some other measure of time here? So in other words, when,
there is no time.
Okay.
Period. Have you ever been to the past? You think of the past, but you think of the past now. Have you ever actually been to the place called the past that you think about?
No.
Has anyone here ever actually stepped out of the now just for a moment and actually gone to the place that we call the past, or indeed the future?
No.
Well, has anybody ever gone there?
No.
Could anybody ever go there?
No.
I mean, don't you think that if the past really existed, that someone, just for a moment, would have gone there? Surely that must be the test of the existence of the past. We must experience it. What other test could there be? That's just scientific. That's what scientists do. They make up a theory, the theory of the past, and then they test it. Is it actually there? Can we find it? Okay, we have a theory of the past. Now, like proper, honest scientists, let's test it. Go there. Try now to go there. Try and step out of the now, just for a moment, and visit the place called the past. It's not possible. Nobody's ever been there. It's a belief. It's just a belief that we all take for granted. Is it your experience that the now is moving along a line of time from the past to the future? Is the now moving?
No, it's now.
How many nows are there? If you say it's now and now and now, it's like how many nows have you experienced during this meeting?
As I experience it, that's when it's now, right?
Yes, but how many nows have you experienced, for instance, during this meeting?
Only one.
And today?
Only one.
And in your life?
Only one.
And how long does the now last? It doesn't last.
No.
The now doesn't last in time. There is no time
okay.
for the now to last
Got
in. Now is not a moment sandwiched between these two vast spaces. There is no vast space either side of the now. The now is not a moment. We hear about them staying in the present moment, things like that. These are New Age ideas. They have nothing to do with truth or reality. Now is not a moment. Now is eternity. The ever-present, not the everlasting. But when that now is filtered through the limitations of the mind, it appears as time.
Okay. Got it.
The mind is like a prism which refracts the now, which has no dimensions, into a single dimension of time. And while we're about it, I won't explain it, this is your homework. The place we call here, I'll just elaborate it a little bit, I won't join all the dots, but does not all your experience appear at the place called here? Has anyone ever had an experience that did not take place here? In other words, have you ever been to the place called there? Because there is always the distance between, space is the distance between here and there, like time is the distance between now and then. So again, if we're just simple, scientific, we know what we call here. We think it's a place in space, but actually here is not a place in space. Here is the place where I am, the place where consciousness is. But have you ever been to the place called there? Could you ever go to the place called there? Has anyone ever been to the place called there? So if nobody has ever experienced the place called there, what does this say about our experience of space? How could we experience space if the place called there is never found? What would space be between here and what? You see, we don't experience, it's more difficult to understand this in relation to space than time, because space has more dimensions than time. But like time, space is never actually experienced. The here at which experience takes place is not a place in space. It is the placeless place at which I am, at which consciousness is. When that, which is called infinity, infinite, not finite, no dimensions, not extended forever in space, but no dimensions in space at all. When that dimensionless presence is refracted through perception, it appears as space. So the mind is like a prism which refracts the eternal infinite nature of awareness and makes it appear as time and space. And this is, in fact, I'm not describing some extraordinary, abstract, philosophical idea. I'm just describing our experience. What is extraordinary and abstract and philosophical is the belief in the existence, the absolute existence of time and space.
Can you extend that to matter? So we touched on time and space.
Well, in what medium would matter exist if we've done away with time and space? How could something with dimensions appear in that which has no dimensions?
Only in the objective world. Objects is matter.
What objective world? There is no objective world. Have you ever experienced an objective world? Have you ever experienced a world outside consciousness? Point now to the objective world, the world outside consciousness. Just show us anything that appears outside consciousness in your experience. all our experience takes place at the place we call here. Yes, your current experience. Have you ever had an experience that didn't take place at the place you call here?
No.
Yeah, so here is a localization of consciousness. It is the point of view, the point at which consciousness views itself as the world. It is natural to feel that your experience is localized at the place we call here. But in fact, it's not just your thoughts that seem to take place here. Close your eyes a minute. Now, where does the sound of my voice take place in your experience? Does it take place at the place you call here, or does it take place at the place you call over there?
Here.
And where does the sensation of your hand on the mic take place?
Here.
Is there any difference between the here at which the sensation takes place and the here at which the sound takes place?
No.
And where are your thoughts taking place?
Within that same space.
At the place called here. Now tell us, keep your eyes closed, tell us from your experience about the experience of here. You are obviously experiencing what you call here now, so you don't need to refer to your memory. So don't refer to the past, don't refer to memory. Tell us about your experience of the place called here.
Well, everything arises within here. And like you're pointing to, it's...
When you say within, what size is the place called here?
I can't quantify it.
You can't quite, so there cannot be an inside of something that has no size. So although it is perfectly legitimate at a certain stage of the teaching to say all experience takes place within awareness, it's not quite true. There is no inside of awareness. Shut your eyes again. Awareness has no spatial dimension. That's your experience now. You are aware now, yes? Are you experiencing space now? Is there any space in your experience?
It feels spacious, but...
Don't refer to the past. Imagine you were a newborn infant. This is the first experience you have ever had. Would you have any knowledge of space?
No.
So what is the nature of the place we call here? Is here a place in space? Open your eyes now. Space appears to you. Where does space appear to you? So here cannot be a location in space, because space appears in it, in the place we call here.
I think that's maybe where I was getting caught, is feeling as though, or sticking with that teaching of everything arises within consciousness, and then conflating consciousness with space.
With space. It's a legitimate teaching. It's a kind of an intermediary step between the Vedantic and the Tantric approaches. I'll say more about that later, not over the next few days, but it's a perfectly legitimate teaching. I often refer to it. A lot of Buddhist teaching is based on the idea of the spaciousness of consciousness. Why? Because space is in our relative experience, space is one of the closest elements of our experience to consciousness. It is empty. It has no limits. It's transparent. It's non-objective. Well, it is objective, but it has no solid, objective qualities. So in many ways, physical space mimics the qualities of consciousness, and therefore it is used as a metaphor, legitimately so. It is used as a metaphor for consciousness, but people often forget that it is a metaphor and really believe, because it's used so commonly, and it's not always explained that it's just a metaphor. We begin to think, oh, consciousness is really spacious. It's like a vast space. Consciousness is not a vast space. It has no dimensions. And that's, again, it's not some abstract non-dual philosophy. If you were to close your eyes now and go to the experience of being aware, and really try to describe the experience, do it now, close your eyes, try to describe the experience of being aware. You have no doubt that you are aware. In other words, being aware is your experience. Being aware is being aware. Awareness is being aware. Tell us about the experience of being aware.
My mind immediately wants to say things are arising within awareness.
No, but don't talk about the things, talk about the experience of being aware. Describe the experience of being aware.
I can't find any boundaries.
That's it. You can't describe it. Your silence is the best answer. You cannot describe it. Why? Because there's nothing there objectively to describe. That there's no feature or quality or dimension. The mind cannot say anything that is true about it. But as a concession to the mind that wants to think about it and speak about it, we agree to add this space-like quality to awareness and call it the space of awareness, or the space-like presence of awareness, or the sky of awareness. These are perfectly legitimate teaching aids, visualizations. But at some point we have to abandon them. Awareness is not a space. Consciousness has no dimensions. And all of this is made out of it.